Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Jashed. Today I'm very fortunate to have with me two guests. I have Stephen and Donna Fry joining me from Adelaide in South Australia, and I was put onto their work. They are currently doing a 366-day journey of meeting someone new every day. And it seems to be online, whether that's by force with pandemic or just by the nature of how it worked. So I feel like that was a really good opportunity to talk about how we reach out to people and how it can feel to reach out to people as well. So I'm really grateful for you guys to join me today. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you for having us.
yeah, thanks so much, Jessica.
My pleasure. So again, the first question that keeps coming to mind is how it's, I'll go with this question first and then I have a follow-up.
Yep.
To reach out to someone and be in contact with someone new every day, because sometimes there can be, I imagine, or for me, I get weariness even though I like interacting with people. I need like a day or two where I don't really interact with people. So how has that journey been for you both?
Yep.
Yes.
So it's a long story, but I refer to myself as a recovering socially awkward engineer. So I'm a bit like yourself, Jessica. It's, you get to that point where you feel like you need to be alone. I guess I've got to the point now where for us, the adrenaline rush in life is to speak to people that we don't know. Some people like to jump out of planes. Other people like to do other scary stuff. For us, it's really talking to people that we don't know. Gives us that. It's just an amazing experience. Because everyone has a story, everyone has gone through a different journey in life that we have. So every single person, there's something that you can learn from them. And yeah, I'm not saying this has been an easy thing to do. When we first started, we met people physically every day. It was the 27th of November. We thought how we were going to do this for 366 days was wake up every day, have a look at our diary, see what days we've got free or what hours we got free, figure out where we can go to say hello to people. Because when you're physically meeting people, you had to say hello to enough people to find someone that would want to have a conversation with you, let alone then go and have a photograph with you. But that's what we did. So we joined things we never did before, like go to the gym. Hadn't been to the gym for 30 years, but there's people at the gym, so let's go to the gym. And then when the pandemic came along, we don't quite remember how it happened, but we sort of fell into LinkedIn as a way of, scratching around, still looking to find someone to meet every day. And then that's just turned into something quite unexpected. So we've gone from waking up every day going, where are we going to go today to meet someone, to sitting here now with like appointments in the diary for the next 3 weeks, at least a couple of people a day to catch up and talk with via Zoom. It's quite a drastic change from where it was, but still not easy. If you want to add anything.
And like yourself, Jessica, I guess, sometimes there is that little element of feeling a bit tired. You wake up and look in the diary and it's like, oh, how did we manage to get 5 people in the diary today? And because the numbers do vary, and there is that little bit of a sense of weariness. But I find always when we actually get on the call and start talking to somebody, you just sort of come to life again, because every person is so different and so interesting, and you just really enjoy talking to people and getting to know them and learning something new. But every now and then we have a kind of unexpected day, like yesterday was one of those days, and we had, was it 4?
Yep.
I think we had 4 appointments in the diary, and we'd had a big night the night before. I won't go into that, but we hadn't had a whole lot of sleep, and we got up at 7 for a call, and that person didn't turn up. So we went on with what we were doing, and then someone had moved a call a bit later on, and then we had another call in the afternoon, and so we got ready for that one, and that person didn't show up, and we thought, well, it's quite unusual for that to happen, like more, in the same day. And then another person had asked to be moved earlier in the day. So we were down to, is that when you went and found somebody else?
Yeah.
Yes. Was that the lady that?
Yeah.
Yes. So Stephen found another lady that was happy to come on, that had wanted to catch up. So we did a call with her, and it was early evening. And then when we put up the post, and I kind of left it till a bit later because we had other things happening, we put up the post, and then the lady wasn't happy with what the picture. So we thought, oh, we'll take it down then. So we did that, and which is understandable, because, you know, some people, if they're a little bit shy and you know, not sure about things, sometimes people can, when they see that up there of themselves, can get a bit like, oh, you know, everyone's going to see this, and then and they, yeah. So we thought, that's okay. So then it was very late at night by this stage, and we're thinking, oh, we've got to find somebody. So yeah, Stephen just was madly messaging people, and then a young man from India said, yeah, sure, I'll jump on a Zoom call with you now. So at 11:30 last night, we did our one call for the day. But you know, that was a really unexpected day too. I haven't really had, only had one other of those where we had to do a late night. Help, we need somebody. Yes.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's a long day as well. So thank you again for getting up this morning and talking to me.
Oh, no, that's okay. We get up early anyway, because, you know, you don't want to waste the day.
I feel like I want to talk to the element of asking people in person first, because at the moment, like, well, not at the moment, in general, like, we live in such an online world, and I know that even, you know, like, even growing up, so before we were in this huge element of technology and how we connect with people online, I have always felt shy just reaching out to strangers unless I had a role to play.
Yeah.
So, like, unless I was working, or I used to do events and functions for my work as well. So if I was in that role, it was like, I can step into this element of, I'm taking care of people, so I feel comfortable, like, just walking up to strangers and be like, you know, hey, like, how's it going, la la la, because it's more about their comfort. But, you know, in standing in a grocery line, for example, I'm not standoffish, and I'm not ignoring people. So if I make eye contact, or if something, you know, funny happens, like, I'll smile at someone and everything like that. But there's this element for me personally of, I don't want to bother people, or, like, there's a shyness there. So the idea of, like, reaching out to people in person is definitely a skill I probably personally need to work on again, because of that element and because of those reasons. But how was that for you? How did that feel to communicate in person?
It's not something that we woke up and felt comfortable, like on the 27th of November, to go out and speak to people we didn't know. In a nutshell, and this is probably a whole other podcast, but in the last 4.5 years, we've learned more than I've learned in 12 years at school, 4 years at university, and 30 years of climbing the corporate ladder, simply by having someone leading me to read. And that's caused a whole change. So we were prepared in some way. We'd gone through a preparation, I guess, in learning how to communicate with people. And, you know, for me, being the socially awkward engineer, now recovering, you know, for us, it was just learning just to say hello. Like, even that was hard for me. You know, it all just starts with saying hello. And then it progressed to understanding that when I do say hello and someone doesn't respond, it's not a reflection on me, it's a reflection on them, for whatever reason. Because so often, if I'd say hello to someone and they wouldn't respond, then I'd look inwards and start going, you know, what did I do wrong? What did I say? I've done nothing wrong. I've done the right thing. I've reached out to someone. They've chosen not to engage. That's a reflection on them, not on me. So, you know, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's so true. You can only control what you can control. And all we could control was to say hello. We couldn't control the outcome of it, but we could choose how we could react to the outcome of it. Then it went even a bit further than that, because and we learnt this as we went on, that's the first step. So you say to someone hello and they don't respond, and you go, it's a reflection on them. And you sort of do that in a very judgmental sort of way, it's a reflection on them,
they're
whatever.
grumpy, or they're stuck up, or
So that
makes yourself feel better, I think, when you do that.
So then we learnt the next step, which was not only do we, not it's a reflection they're not on us, but we also got to the point to learn, not good at it yet, but not to judge their non-response either. Like, the fact that they didn't respond could be for a multitude of reasons that I don't know, because I'm not in their shoes. So it was learning not to judge someone that didn't respond, and just happily go on and saying hello until someone wanted to engage in a conversation. It's something that you and I can control. And then there needs to be, for me, there had to be motivation. Like a social awkward engineer just doesn't wake up one day and want to go out and start talking to people. But the motivation for us was just and as it always has been in this journey, is to learn how to better communicate with people without an agenda. That was the key bit. Have you read Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
I sure have, yeah.
Yeah, so habit 5. So this guy writes a book about 7 habits of highly effective people. So you go, oh, wow, I wonder what that's all about. I wonder what that, and one of them, habit 5, is all about dealing with people. It talks about seeking to understand before being understood. And so what we took from that really was, when you're having conversations, is seek to understand before, being understood yourself, because you always want to feel comfortable about talking about yourself. But, seek to really understand what people are thinking and saying, and attempt to get in their shoes the best that you can.
And for me, that was about learning to listen better, because I didn't ever really have a lot of trouble saying hello to people in public, and I've always done that. There's often a reason, like, oh, someone's got a cute baby, or I really love your scarf, or your hair, I love the colour of your hair, that kind of thing. That's just always been fairly natural with me. But then I've always been the one that, if I'd start a conversation with somebody, it was usually about me. And that doesn't really build relationships when you do that, because, people are probably sitting there going, oh, I didn't ask, why is she telling me this sort of thing? But yeah, that was just the way I was. So it was kind of funny, because, in the whole journey, it's been helpful for Stephen in actually learning how to just say that initial hello and start a conversation. And for me, it's been say hello and then seek to learn about that person and ask questions and actually listen to the answers, and hold myself back when they said something that was like, oh yes, I know, I've done that too, or I can relate to that. Instead of saying that, to just ask more questions and get to know more about that person. And it's really a lot more fun and interesting to do it that way, to be honest. So that's been a good learning as well. Yeah.
It is. It's I feel like, and I know that in How to Win Friends and Influence People, like, that's the sort of idea, is that taking an interest in other people actually opens them up. And even if, like, you're the one asking them questions, I can't remember if it's written explicitly in that book, or if it's kind of just alluded to, where they can walk away from that interaction and feel like you're the most interesting person in the world, even though you didn't really share much about you at all, because you were just taking interest in them. And that's just how our psychology works as humans, I think. But it's definitely an interesting learning. Did you find that, because like I said, like, if I feel like I have a way in to communicate, it's easier. And when you said, like, mentioning like compliments, I've done that before, where I felt comfortable, like, just in, like the women's bathrooms when you're washing your hands, and like, oh, I really love your boots, or something like that. That actually feels super comfortable for me, because it's not about it takes away, and I don't, as I say this, I'm not sure if it's avoidance of vulnerability or not, and I talk a lot about vulnerability and how important it is, but it takes away that feeling of like scariness of being like, hi, like I'm asking you for something. It's more of a, hey, I'm just, you know, like giving you a compliment.
Yeah.
So do you think that for people who might feel like it's like it is scary or uncomfortable or learning a different way of communicating and reaching out, if they have that way in to make it comfortable to begin with as a habit, and then they can build their confidence from there, like whatever way it is, whether it's giving someone else a compliment or commenting. For me, it's dogs. Like, you know, I'm more likely to talk to the dog like as I walk past rather than notice the human. So do you think that it's helpful for people to kind of have that?
Yeah. It's like every habit that you want to develop. It's got to start small. You know, when you, like for me, when I started reading, if I started reading an hour a day, I think I would have stopped ages ago. But you start small and you grow into it. So for me, it literally started with just saying hello to people. So, you know, we'd walk around the lake here near where we live, and you'd go past 20, 30 people in a half an hour. And most times, if I ever walk past people, I just walk past them. But we've just developed that habit of everywhere we go, everyone we pass, just say hello to. That didn't happen overnight. It just became a habit that, you know, we just say hello. You know, don't care what the response is, but we're going to say hello. And then that just gravitates into, you know, if it is a desire that you want to communicate better with people, you'll learn. You'll read books on. There's so many books about communicating with people and people that have been introverts that gone out and done experiments to communicate with people. Like, there's so many things you can read. So then you pick up on things like ask open-ended questions as opposed to statements, because you know, in your example where, you know, you're in the toilet and you ask someone about, you know, oh, nice handbag, then you're going to get like a pretty standard response, which will be like, thanks. And it sort of stops there. But if you went, hey, nice handbag, where did you get it from? Then you start a conversation, because then they have to, you know, have some sort of response to that. So they're things that, you know, you learn as you go, because, you know, you've got a desire to get better. It's all about a desire to get better ourselves, because we can't really help anyone else if we don't get better. You know, the socially awkward engineer sitting in his cubicle has less chance of making an impact on the world than someone that's going to learn how to get out there and communicate with people. So that's what drives everything. You know, what's your desire? So we just learned things like that learn how to better, like families, like when you're talking to someone you don't know, how do you engage in conversations about their family without, you know, because with this day and age, you just don't know where people, so we've learned to ask a very simple question, which is just, you know, like I did with yourself, do you live with family? And then you get all the information. You know, we found out you're probably single, you're living with friends, you know, rather than saying, oh, you know, do you have a husband? You know, like, it's really weird, because, you know, like, because if you don't, now you might have negative thoughts coming up.
It's like the answer of no.
Yeah.
We've actually had that, haven't we? Where we said, because when we were still learning, and said something to someone about a spouse, and they said, "Oh, no, you know, I know I'm getting on in life," or something, and then we felt awful because we felt like we'd made them feel bad. That when you do those kind of things, that actually makes you, you know, afterwards we'll say, well, we need to change that question and formulate a question that's going to, you know, not make people feel like they've got pressure on them in any way, or, you know, and if people don't want to disclose anything, they don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like that question around like not asking women, well, it is like that, not asking women when they're planning on having kids, because you don't know what the stories are behind that as well. That's such a, like, it's such a great active learning that you both are undertaking. Like, instead of just sort of staying passive and going, oh, why aren't these people responding well to this question? You're like, oh, what do we need to change in how we approach this question, or just to start to learn which I think is such a great thing, because sometimes we do fall into complacency, especially when it comes to communication, because it's easier. Sometimes communication, most of the time, is uncomfortable, and it is, you know, like, especially when it's unknown. I mean, especially when you are meeting people in person versus online. At least online, you can kind of vet an idea of who they are. Whereas in person, you're like, I have no idea. Like, you know, like, who knows anything about this kind of person as well. So it is such a great active learning that you guys are doing in part of this project as well.
It challenges yourself a lot, though, because when you talk about you and you're meeting people you don't know, then what you do is you run the risk of having a conversation with someone that has a completely separate belief than yourself. So one of the things we had to deal with was how intolerant we actually were. Like, we had no idea how intolerant we actually were. We thought we were quite tolerant. Not intolerant, like, you know, if you know what I mean, but just, you know, that when you're having a conversation with someone and you're going, hey, this is going pretty cool, and then all of a sudden you ask a question and out comes a belief that's completely different to yours, and your mind sort of just goes a bit crazy.
You start to get this little bit of a barrier coming up, and a feeling of like, oh,
yeah,
it's challenging. It does.
So, you know, we, through that, and you can see, like, with what's happening in different parts of the world today, but, you know, you learn through that you can have different beliefs. It doesn't mean you don't like the other person, but you've got to be comfortable. Well, we're learning still to be comfortable that, you know, people do have different beliefs, but it doesn't mean I have to believe what they believe. It doesn't mean that I don't like them because they believe different. They just have a different belief. So, you know, I'm going to seek to understand why they have that belief. And that's where it gets scary and even more vulnerable, because if you open yourself up to seek to understand, what you're also doing is you're opening yourself up to listen to someone talk about their beliefs, which means you might actually realize that your beliefs are incorrect. You know, it might be that you learn from someone something where you go, oh, well, all my life I've, you know, so that's the risk that you run, and which is why, I guess, is one of the reasons having conversations and understanding people can be scary unknowingly, because you hear things that you just don't want to hear.
And that's and I'm so glad you brought that up as well, because that's a really powerful part of how we grow and develop as humans, right? Is looking at our beliefs, and because there's a difference, I feel like, between values and beliefs. Values are an inherent, like, set of core values that you live from, but it doesn't limit you. It doesn't narrow you into this little box over here. But beliefs can be so limiting, just because, like you said, like, sometimes it closes you off to the fact that you could have a really functioning friendship relationship with someone else, even if you have slightly different beliefs. But also, it can be so comfortable to stay in our own limiting beliefs, because it's where our comfort is, right? It's whatever has led to them being there for whatever reason. Like, usually it's in childhood development, that kind of element, but it's comfortable there. And when we have to look at that, it almost feels like it's an element of us. Like, it almost feels like it's an aspect of us that we're finding out is, I don't think beliefs are wrong, because they're all kind of made up. Yeah, but it is an aspect of us that is, maybe we have to look at it and go, oh, I've been holding myself back in some way. And that's confronting. That can feel confronting.
Well, we develop, you know, so in my case, with regards to dealing with people, a belief system was developed when I was young, which for us was incorrect. So, you know, so you grow up, you know, I remember distinctly as a kid, you know, watch out for the white van, watch out for the guy, don't take lollies from strangers. You know, and, you know, we grew up when the Beaumont children disappeared in Adelaide. So it was like, you know, the big scary city. And then, you know, then a couple of children went missing from Adelaide Oval. So you grew up with this incredible fear a belief system about, you know, strangers are bad.
And even that fear of being separated from your parents and people that you knew, you know, if you found yourself somewhere that, you know, you weren't with familiar people, could become really,
So, you know, the truth being that none of us get born shy. We don't get born shy. Shyness is something that gets developed, and in some cases, it gets developed, you know, by parents and their kids. You know, like, you know, just the interaction that some parents have. You know, the natural reaction of a young child when it sees a stranger is to hide. Like it is. It's different. So when two adults meet and the young child sees the other person, it might go behind the parent and hold onto its leg, and because that's just a natural reaction. But how many times does someone go, "Oh, gee, your kid's shy"?
Yeah.
And then the parent, not knowing what's going on, will probably condone it rather than saying, "No, she's not shy. She's just behaving like any other child would behave when she sees a stranger, which is to hide." Right? So people grow up with a false belief about shyness induced to them by just their environment, and it's not true. We're not born shy. So that's what I guess I mean by beliefs that some beliefs are like, for me, it was just not a right belief. I didn't know. I was 50 years of age before someone handed me How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, it's a really, I feel like that's a really important thing to look at is where our beliefs are. But like even a couple of times in this conversation, I have thought of the whole stranger danger thing. Like I'm like, oh, is that safe? And it is, I think that could be if you don't know, you can't like vet the person and what kind of person they are. So when you approach them, even if it's in public, right, like in a shopping center, you never know what the reaction will be. So I guess like that's a good question as well, is have you, like, where has the feeling of safety come for you in that? I mean, I guess both of you would have been together while you're approaching people. So
but it's
numbers, but for those who think of that, because I definitely did.
It's not like we you know, jump out behind a curtain and go, "Hello." Like we literally wanted to learn the skill of how to interrupt someone without being weird. Like, how do you engage in a conversation? So you could maybe talk about Sam.
I guess there's been, I don't feel there's ever been an occasion where, you know, it's been kind of scary, except for maybe this one, but it wasn't to do with where we were or anything like that, because we were just at the gym and there's a lot of people at the gym, but it was late at night and we hadn't met anyone because this was still the physical meeting stage. And we were coming out of the gym and we, you know, said, "Oh, if we don't meet anyone here, we're going to have to, you know, go into the city or something crazy like that. So let's make it happen." But we were walking past a young guy and he was sitting on a chair. He had headphones on and he was looking down at his phone, and he had gigantic arms. Huge, like he was so muscly. He was enormous.
Everywhere.
And I looked at him and I thought, no, he looks too scary. You know, he might not like being interrupted from what he's doing. But Stephen was behind me and I sort of could see him looking at this guy. And in my head, I'm saying, nah, don't talk to him. He looks a bit scary. He might be mad if we interrupt him. He's doing something on his phone. And then I heard Stephen say, "Gee, mate, you've got big arms." And I thought, oh my goodness. And this guy looks up and just smiled, and he took off his headphones and he stood up and he said, "Oh, how you going, mate? Yeah, thanks for that." And then we had this fantastic conversation, and he was just the sweetest young man, telling us about his little boy who's just absolutely gorgeous and showing us photos. And we're like, oh, wow, you know. And after we left the gym, I said to Stephen, that was a real slap for me, because I really judged that guy. And I thought that he was going to be scary and I didn't want to speak to him. And that was the biggest shake-up I've had, I think. Of, you know, it was a real poke in the eye, like, you know, like, stop thinking about people and thinking and making assumptions and prejudging, because you've got no idea what's underneath that layer, which is just, you know, we all have an outer shell, I guess, and we all look different and we all do things to ourselves. You know, people have coloured hair and multiple piercings and tattoos and that, but it doesn't mean anything. It just means they like doing different things. And that's something that we really, and especially for me, just had to say, you know, look, I'm really going to make an effort to not judge anybody for any reason, but to be open to talk to anybody. Yeah.
I feel that's such a good lesson and a good thing that you point out as well, because like we all do that, you know, to some degree or another, consciously or unconsciously. There is an element of judging people based on not just what they look like, but what they're doing. Like, you know, if they're closed off, like headphones on, like there is an element of unwelcoming.
Yes.
And not necessarily that they could just be like really focusing on what they're doing, or they could be working through something, or just be like, you know, not having anyone to talk to at that time, so they're just
right,
comfortable, like, you know. So it's would you say that was the only time that you've had that realization for either of you, of like the judge or the prejudgments that we can
no
learn from those beyond that?
I can't think of any other specific times, but you know, sometimes after you talk to a person, you know, we just look at each other and go, we just thought that was going to go differently, because just maybe the way the person looked, or what they were doing, or where they were, or, it's so human to judge people, because we just put people in boxes, and depending on where they are, what they're doing, it's just like you look at them and you go, oh, they're this and they're that and they're, our minds just do that. It's a weird thing.
It's a survival element, like it's a throwback to our judgment of people has helped us in history survive, because we surround ourselves with people who are safe for us, who are our community, and that, like, judgment is a survival mechanism for things, or for animals and all sorts, I'm sure, but it's just
definitely.
All of this is, I'm reading a book at the moment called Together by Dr. Vivek Murthy. He was the 19th Surgeon General of the United States, and in it, I'm getting to a point, but in it, he when he was in his tenure of Surgeon General, he was expecting to sort of look at the health epidemics like smoking and, you know, like that sort of disease, like that kind of thing, but like obesity, smoking, cancer, all of that. But he realized one of the biggest issues in health and well-being for people is loneliness, because there's an element of connectedness that we as humans need. And he shares there's different types of loneliness, so like familial loneliness, or intimate, like having a confidant, you know, loneliness, or community, but also different kinds of connectedness as well, and how they differently work, or how they might limit us, or how they might expand us. And it's just a timely thing that I'm reading it during have started reading it during periods of certain kind of isolation in the world. But also, like, it just makes me think of, like, when we're talking, it makes me think of that again, because there's an element of reconnecting with humans in a way that we might, you know, always have, but kind of stepped away from through different things like fears and that. So have you found about that feeling of connectedness with other humans?
In talking to people, we see definitely a desire to want to communicate with others. And as you said, we're meant to communicate, and we've heard that so much from other people. But you know, it takes us to reach out. Like, someone has to reach out. Like, you know, two people, someone has to reach out, and that's what we looked at and thought, well, that's something we can do, is we can reach out. No one can stop us from doing that. It is completely controllable by us. But I can't control whether they're going to want to respond to that, but I can control reaching out. So it's funny, it all just comes back to us again, you know, like there is, it's us getting better. It's, no looking at the outside world. We need to grow and get better enough that we can engage in conversations.
Yeah,
but sorry.
Well, I just feel we've been really encouraged just by the number of people that have actually really appreciated that we've reached out to them, and even in physically reaching out to people. Even though sometimes we'd go through, 3 or 4 hellos or even more sometimes to get to a point of having a photo with somebody and a reasonable conversation, most of the times at the end that person would say, hey, this is a really cool idea, thanks for saying hello. I reckon it's a great thing that you're doing, and they'd really appreciate it. A lot of people said, oh man, this really made my day. And even just thinking about that and just the whole idea of reaching out and connecting to people. I remember back before we started this journey, just because we've all, I've sort of often said hello to people just for the sake of it. I remember being in an elevator in a shopping centre with my daughters, and there was one guy in there on his own, and he was on his phone, and I just said, oh, hello. And he kind of looked up and looked from side to side and realised that he was the only other one there. And he said, oh, are you talking to me? And I said, yeah, hi, how are you? And he said, do we know each other? And I said, no, I just like saying hello to people sometimes. And he said, oh, that's really cool. Oh, thank you so much for that. That really made my day. Yeah. And, I feel like a lot of people would be like that. A lot of people, and what you said before about, he might have been on his phone because he just had no one to talk to. Maybe he was shy, and so that was his way of hiding from having to look at people in case someone, he felt like he should say hello. I think a lot of people really do maybe hide in technology that would love someone to reach out to them, and I find that really encouraging. When we're talking to people. There might be a lot of people that sort of grunt at you or look the other way when you say hello, and that's okay. Like we said, they might be having a bad day, but people do really appreciate it, and that is really encouraging.
And and all you got to do is say hello. Like, if you want to add value to someone, you just need to say hello. Like, you can think of all these wonderful things you can do, but if you want to add value, you want a chance to change the direction of your life, say hello to someone. Because it's the arenas in life that you get to play in normally come through people that you don't know. Right. So saying hello to someone could potentially change the direction of your life. Saying hello to someone add value to people because it really does. So that's the most exciting thing for us for all of this is, we see saying hello to people as adding value. It's the best way we can add value to people is to recognise them.
Yeah, because for someone
to recognise them by just saying hello. Yeah. And right now is an amazing time to connect with people.
Yes. Yeah.
Because if you read books about connecting with people, one of the themes is to find common ground. Like, find something common with people. And that is evident. Why that's important is when you go overseas, for example, and you're in the middle of France and you find another Australian and they're like your long lost friend. But when you come back to Australia, you might never speak to them again because for whatever reason. So that idea of common ground is so strong. So when you're talking to someone, if you can find common ground, like you lived in, just whatever it is. And right now, though, every single person on the entire planet has common ground. Like, it's just amazing. Like, every person has had an experience with the coronavirus. So if you want something to say to someone, it's simply a matter of, hi, hello, how has this affected you? Right? Because everyone has a story with that, no matter what part of the planet they come from. You speak to someone in India and their story about the coronavirus is completely different than someone in Adelaide at the moment. Like, it's quite astonishing. Speak to someone in Brazil and they have a different story. So it's just a great way technology allows us to talk to everyone, and the coronavirus has given everyone common ground. So it really is an exciting time to talk to people.
It is. And it's a good time too, because there are a lot of people in isolation and people feeling lonely and shut off, and people living in fear, in places where the rates are really high, and Yeah. So, you know, people want to know that other people care about them.
Yeah. People just want to be seen.
Yes.
And acknowledged.
Yeah.
And sometimes being seen like on a deeper level feels confronting, but generally I think the general consensus is like people want to be seen.
Yeah.
And they, even if they don't know it, even if they are actively trying to hide, when
Yeah.
they get acknowledged and seen,
Yeah.
there is like this like, oh, like, thank you, like, you know, the guy in the elevator, he's like, oh, me, oh, you know, like they
Yeah.
feel almost validated, but in a healthy way, not,
Yes.
you know, like it's like a, oh, you exist and you matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
Uh,
Yes.
I feel like that's a great point to end it on. I kind of want to like set a challenge for people listening to reach out to people more, but I'm like, how do we word that? But maybe if it's just last words of advice for people who might be feeling a little isolated or feeling like they want to work on this skill, because it is a skill that should be worked on. And I don't use the word should often, but like it's useful for it to be worked on as far as being a human. So what would be your last words of advice there for someone who might recognize that it's something that they could work on?
Yeah, I would, for me, it was about having a reason to want to grow and get better. If you go out there just to develop a skill, then it's going to lose, I guess, enthusiasm sooner or later. So above the desire to learn how to better communicate with people, there's a desire to get better for ourselves for a specific reason. So, you know, it's about finding out and getting clarity around what you want to do and achieve with your life. And once you have that, then you can start to make sense about the skills that you need to develop. So, you know, this was one for us that we saw as so important for us to move towards what we now have clarity around, the direction we want to go in our life. So most definitely clarity around where you want to go, because that'll drive all the habits, drive the reason for doing the habits. And for me, it was learning to understand that what I did is not who I am. And what I mean by that was, you know, after climbing the corporate ladder for 30 years, my whole self-esteem was tied up in being an engineer. And that is not, well, in hindsight for me, I'm not saying it is for everyone, but for me, it wasn't a healthy thing to have, because that then made things very restrictive. So I learned through someone asking me challenging questions that what I do is not who I am. And then once you start asking yourself the questions around who are you, then you get all sorts. Well, first of all, I drew a blank, which is pretty scary when you're 50 years of age and you finally go, well, who am I? And you go, oh, I don't know. Yeah. So, but then all that led to defining clarity around, well, who am I? Who is Stephen Fry? What does he want to do with his life? What do we want to do? And then that clarity led us to understand we had to change. I have to change. And for us, when we a bit further down from that then was, okay, part of this is learning how to better communicate with people. That's been ongoing for us, because before we started this journey, we went to nearly every event we could possibly go to in Adelaide as a way of, you know, putting ourselves in a position to have to say hello to someone.
Well done. Yeah, that can be challenging.
Fun though, in the end. But through that, the flip side of that is through that we met so many people that we started in Adelaide what we call the Adelaide Entrepreneur Club, as a way of people hearing about the mindset from others that have overcome challenges. So we had people that we met come and share their story and open up to anyone that wanted to come and listen. And surprising enough, lots of people turned up to hear people talk about their story of overcoming. Don't know how I got into that, but anyway.
And look, if I could just, my encouragement would just be to people to reach out, and to step out of your comfort zone if, you know, if it's a scary thing, but people will appreciate it. And I think a key thing is needing to just like look outward instead of inward, because you know a lot of people say, oh, I'd love to talk to people but I'm scared, you know, I'd love to, oh, what if they think I'm weird, or you know, that kind of thing. And I, you know, we went through all that kind of thought as well, but at the end of the day it doesn't really matter. Like no one's gonna think about that further down the track. It's like, take the plunge, just step out there and say hello to people. You know, what's the worst thing that can happen? They won't respond. Yeah. And it's just not the end of the world. And you sort of, you overcome all of that as you go along, and you do find that you have fun. But this is a time when people want connection and want somebody to know they exist, as you put it, someone to care about them, and someone to hear what they're going through. Maybe there's a lot of people that would so much benefit from someone reaching out to them to say hello and how are you going in this time. So I would just strongly encourage people that have been thinking about, you know, how do I connect, what do I do, to just do it. Because there's no right way, there's no wrong way, there's, you know, there's just reach out, just, you know, get on your keyboard and whatever platform you use and say, oh, hello, you know, on LinkedIn, or connect with people. And a lot of people just go connect, and then you're just all of a sudden connected to these people, but you've never spoke to them. So I just started by going through the list of people I connected with and just saying, oh, hi, so-and-so, how are you going? You know, you can see where people live. How are you going? What's happening where you're living right now? And not everyone responds, and that's fine. But the people that do, I've had some good conversations with, and then we've met on our journey. So, don't be afraid of what might happen. Just be excited about what will happen. That's great, and the fact that you can give and you can add value to people. Because a lot of people talk about, I want to help people and I want to add value to people. This is one of the best ways to do it right now.
Yeah. And you're right, like we get so caught up in like, oh, what might happen if I do this, but really the experience, you know, will far outweigh the negative things that we're making up will happen all the time. Like, you know, there may be the odd one, but it won't be like, it'll be barely a blip compared to the actual experience. And the only way to work through discomfort also is, like, the only way to get comfortable with things is to work through the discomfort and to be in it. So that's wonderful advice from both of you. Thank you so much for your time and for joining me here this morning. It was so great to have this chat and to learn more, and I feel like there's so much value that you guys have shared just through your experiences in connectedness as humans and reaching out and being uncomfortable and learning on like the basic level of communication, which is just acknowledging other people. So
thanks very much, Jessica. Thanks for having us.